We'll call the meeting of the Finance and Personnel Committee to order. First item of business is the roll call. Alder Feldy.
Present.
Alder Flicky-Paneski.
Here.
Alder Perella.
Here.
Alder Ackley is excused. Mitchell is here. We have a quorum. Will you all please join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, then, barring any objection from the committee, we'll skip item number 4 for introducing committee members and staff. And seeing no objection, we'll move on to item number 5, which is the approval of the minutes from our August 28th meeting. Do we have any discussion on the minutes? If not, we would be looking for a motion to approve.
I move to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second then. Seeing no discussion on the minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Chair votes aye. The ayes have it. The motion passes. Minutes are approved. Next up, we have item number 6, which is resolution number 50 of 2324. A resolution authorizing the appropriate city officials to execute the agreement between the City of Sheboygan and Sheboygan County for development of a crisis co-response pilot program utilizing American Rescue Plan Act state and local fiscal recovery funds. Is there anybody that would like to speak to this one? Generally. If I can get my screen to work. Director Krieger.
Thank you. So this item has actually come forward previously to initiate this process. This is the agreement between the city and the county in order for that program to continue moving forward. It is funded by American Rescue Plan dollars for the first several years to determine its effectiveness and hopefully continue on after that.
Thank you. Questions, comments from the committee? Alder Flicky-Paneski.
Thank you. I noticed that it's 50% from the county and 50% of the funds come from the city. Is that accurate? Yes. Okay, I am always puzzled by the fact that the city is 50% of the county. Just saying. Thank you.
Alder Perella.
When will it actually start? When is going to be effective?
Pretty soon. So Elevate is the company that the county who has hired to provide the social workers. So they've given job offers and we've cleared them. We have a meeting on the 18th to kind of do final steps. So I'm hoping like the first week of October.
And although it is not the subject of tonight anyway, so if I understand correctly, there are conversations about the continuation of the program after 2026, correct? Possibly.
Yeah, and I think some of that goes to Alderman Flicky-Paneski's point. We'll have some data to better establish how effective we are, how much activity is really happening, what they can do, and how much of that is our responsibility and how much is the county's.
Thank you.
Any other discussion from the committee? If not, we will be looking for a motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second, then seeing no further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Chair votes aye. The ayes have it. The motion passes. With that, we're on to item number 7, which was a direct referral of resolution number 56 of 2324, authorizing the appropriate city officials to execute 3 mortgage subordination documents regarding loans to Catering with Culinary Artists, LLC, and Black Pig Elkhart Lake, LLC.
So these matters are before you. I'll give you just a little bit of a background. This originally came to the Redevelopment Authority because the Redevelopment Authority did have a mortgage with Catering with Culinary Artists, which is the Black Pig, and they were doing some refinancing so that they can better deal with what their current loans, as well as potentially do some more things down there. And in doing that, they're changing lenders, and so the idea was to make these mortgages, which they thought the RDA had both of them, make them subordinate to the other loans as they had been prior. As it turns out, though, one of those loans is actually a city loan, not an RDA loan, and that is a loan for $5,000 that was granted to the Black Pig. It's actually written up as a forgivable loan and forgivable at $1,000 a year. 2 years have passed already, but in order to get their financing for the work that they're doing, and to sort of refinance, they need to subordinate those loans. There are actually 3 subordination agreements. One of them is with a state, basically a state-private partnership. One is with the bank, and then the third one is also with the bank, but that has to do with there's a bridge loan, then when they finish with the bridge loan, then they'll have the second loan with the bank, and so both of them need to be subordinated. So having looked at it, we recommend approval.
Thank you. Any discussion from the committee? Alder Flicky-Pineski.
Thank you. The Redevelopment Authority talked this through at length, and we understand and we are in favor of it, so.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Alder Perella.
Yeah, I just, if you don't mind, explain what are the implications of the subordination of a mortgage? I have no idea.
So it's just basically deciding in what order the mortgages take precedence, right? So typically what happened is there was a bank loan, and then below the bank loan were these city loans, right? Well, the bank loan is being paid off in order to have a different bank have the loan, and they want to keep it in that order so that the new bank is also first in line. And typically these loans that we do agree to be second or third in line in these deals. And so that's all that it's doing. I will note that 2 things that make me especially not concerned about subordinating. One is the fact that this is written up as a forgivable loan, so in 3 years down the line, they won't owe anything anyway. And second of all, they actually are overcapitalized. There is enough collateral that if suddenly the business would go out of business, they'd be able to pay all the mortgages.
And why do you refer to them as a plural? I mean, you are saying 3, however, only one is city.
No, there are 3 subordination agreements. There's only one city loan, but there are 3 subordination agreements because there are 2 loans that are ahead of us, one with the bank and one with this private-public partnership. And so that's what's going to stay ahead of us. And the reason there's 3 of them is because on the bank side, they're starting with a bridge loan and then going to a permanent loan. There will only be one of those at a time, but both of them need to be ahead of the city's subordinate loan.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion on this one? If not, we would be looking for a motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second then. Seeing no further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Chair votes aye. The ayes have it and the motion passes. And that brings us to item number 8, which was a direct referral of resolution number 57 of 2324, authorizing the appropriate city officials to execute a temporary use and access license agreement between the Berkey Company Incorporated and the City of Sheboygan for purposes of conducting certain due diligence investigations on real property located in the town of Wilson.
So basically, just to explain what this is, the Berkey Company owns some property in the town of Wilson adjacent to the city, and the city would like to be able to enter onto that property basically to do some soil borings and things like that in a part of it. This is the area where at some point, if there is able to be an extension of Taylor Drive south to connect the two portions of Taylor Drive, this would be in that area. And so this is basically enabling the city to go on the property, get the permission to do that, but also to protect the Berkey company so that we can hire contractors to go on the property and do our due diligence for that.
Questions or comments from the committee? Alder Perrella?
Thank you. Just a clarification. So this is technically right now is Town of Wilson, right? So Town of Wilson has to give the permission as well.
No, the town of Wilson doesn't have to give any permission because the property is not owned by the town of Wilson. It just happens to be in it. In the same way that if I asked you
okay.
permission to go on your land, the city wouldn't have to approve that.
Okay. Yes, thank you.
Any other discussion? If not, we would also be looking for a motion to approve on this one.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second, then seeing no further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Chair votes aye. The ayes have it. The motion passes. That brings us to item number 9, which was a direct referral of resolution number 58 of 2324, a resolution adopting policies to be contained in the City of Sheboygan Employee Handbook.
Thank you. So you received on Friday a hefty document that contains a completely new handbook. It is important to note that many of the policies in the handbook are the same policy, just rewritten. However, there are many changes. Rather than go through and redline every policy and present that to you, the thought was that we are just going to create and draft an entirely new handbook. That was what was presented to you on Friday. After speaking with some council members, I was asked to provide like a high-level overview of the things that are actually changing, the substantive things that are changing. I sent that out in an email this morning. I'm happy to go about this one of two ways. I'm happy to walk through those 11 things that are substantive changes with you, and then if you have questions as we go through them, that's great. I'm also happy just to turn it over to questions right away, whatever the chair feels most appropriate.
I think it would be good to do that walk through the high-level highlights.
Perfect. So the first thing that is not in the handbook, and because it's not in the handbook, it means it doesn't exist, is that we're getting rid of pre-employment drug screens for your everyday city employee. We don't do random testing, so having pre-employment drug screenings is not very effective because just if we're not doing it randomly throughout the year, it serves no purpose. Additionally, many studies have shown that pre-employment drug screens, particularly when you're talking about marijuana, can prohibit individuals from applying who otherwise would be qualified to do the jobs. This does not change the drug testing for CDL required positions, because that's a federal issued program. It also doesn't change the city's ability to drug test on suspicion or post-accident testing or any other reason that we might believe someone is under the influence of drugs or alcohol. This is strictly eliminating that pre-employment drug test after an offer is made. Currently, it's contingent upon a drug screen, and this would be getting rid of that. If there are no questions on that, the next one in order is item 2.03, which is called an anti-bullying policy. Currently, the city has a robust anti-harassment and discrimination policy. However, harassment and discrimination are very legally defined things. It has to be behavior based on a protected status. When I give the training, I like to say being fat is not a protected status. Being bald is not a protected status, right? So you could have employees targeting someone for their weight or targeting someone for how they look, and that isn't harassment or discrimination under the law. However, it's still behavior that we don't want our employees to engage in. So the anti-bullying policy covers all of those things that aren't protected status, but still are behaviors that we don't want in the city. So I'm happy to answer questions on that if there are questions. The next one is 2.09, which is titled Acting Up Pay. In your packet that you were sent, it currently doesn't have anything in there. That is, we have an ordinance that talks about how acting up pay is delivered. So that portion of the policy will match ordinance. We're just going to try to figure out a way to make it make more sense as people are reading it, to understand the process of the order of operations in terms of how someone who's acting up has to get paid, but it will follow the ordinance, so it's already been approved by all of you.
So does the handbook say, see the ordinance?
So it'll reference the ordinance,
Okay.
like what our smoking one does. So it won't just say see the ordinance.
Okay.
But it will say per ordinance
X,
28-1,
yeah.
whatever that ordinance is.
Okay, and can I go back to the very first one about pre-employment drug screening?
Absolutely.
Have other cities and municipalities done away with most of their pre-employment drug screening?
Yes. I would tell you it is industry standard for non-safety sensitive positions that there is no longer a pre-employment drug screen, particularly since the majority of states, at least around us, have legalized recreational and medical marijuana.
Okay,
It just is not nearly what it used to be.
all right, thank you.
Yep. So number 10 is a big one, and this was kind of driven by discussions with council leadership as well as industry trends, and that is the performance evaluations. Currently, performance evaluations are what determine whether or not an employee receives a merit bonus. A bonus is not the right word. A merit increase on their pay. We are going away from that. So it is the city's belief that performance issues should be addressed as they're coming up throughout the course of the year. You shouldn't wait until the annual review to sit down with an employee and say, oh, by the way, you're bad at this, you can improve on this. Those conversations, if they are pertinent, should be happening throughout the year. So the performance evaluation system is moving to more of what we call like a goal setting evaluation. There still will be like metrics and a rubric, right, of how their overall performance was, how their teamwork was, but it'll be less of what you think of when you think of our current evaluation system, 1 through 4. And it'll be much more of the goal setting. What were your goals from last year? Did you achieve those goals? If not, what barred you from achieving them? And then setting goals for the next year. And then importantly, under this policy, there will be no pay incentive. So every employee who's not on a performance improvement plan will receive the step increase under the new policy. And again, in discussions with Dean and Amanda and Director Krieger, that was the direction that they wanted to go. And I will tell you that is starting to become more of a industry trend, particularly in private industry. When you look at Google, Facebook, the mega companies going away from that annual performance review because it just doesn't provide the type of feedback that employees need.
Alder Pro?
I'm a little confused. So I understand that there will be no annual performance review, which is great. I completely agree with that goal-oriented performance review. But I don't understand about so there will be no increase, the increase besides COLA, there will be no increase which is associated with merit.
There will be no merit-based increase. Every employee who's not on a performance improvement plan will get the step, which is in addition to COLA. So COLA changes the entire plan, and then currently, if you get above a 3.0, you move a step on the plan in addition to the COLA, because the COLA changes the plan. So every employee who's not on a performance improvement plan will get the step increase plus COLA.
How does an employee then end up on a performance improvement performance plan?
Yeah, so that's the throughout the year. If a supervisor has an employee who's not meeting expectations, who is struggling with some part of their job, who's just not picking up as quickly as they want, a supervisor at any time, usually with the assistance of HR, can put an employee on a performance improvement plan where it specifically lays out, here are the areas where you are not meeting our standards, here's what we need to see in order for you to improve. And again, the idea is that when we have employees who are not meeting our standards, who are not performing, that should be addressed right away as opposed to waiting. So that's how an employee gets put on a performance improvement plan, just anytime throughout the year. And they can range, I've seen performance improvement plans as short as 3 months and as long as a year. So it's all dependent upon the behaviors and what the supervisor wants.
Sure, but nevertheless, if someone does not meet those goals at whatever step during the year, will that have an impact on the increase besides COLA?
No, so an employee on a performance improvement plan will not move steps. So they will get the COLA, because the COLA
Okay.
adjusts the whole scale. They will not get a step in.
Oh, good.
I will
Which
try
we
to be
can
more
discuss for
concise.
hours if we would like. Please do continue.
Next is
Thank you.
2.12, separation from employment and payouts. There's a couple things that I'm lumping into this one category. The first thing is that now in order to receive any payout, you must give appropriate notice. Appropriate notice has changed. For supervisors and department heads, notice is now 4 weeks. Well, it will be under this policy, a 4-week notice, which again is industry standard for supervisors and department heads. For all other employees, it still remains a 2-week notice period. The change is that you have to provide notice in order to receive any payouts. An additional change is that you can't use PTO to extend your last day. So I couldn't say my last day is December 1st, but I'm going to take 6 weeks of vacation starting November 1st through December 1st. You can't do that any longer. You have to work your last 2 weeks or your notice period unless it's approved by the supervisor. So that means my last 2 weeks, but I have a pre-planned vacation for 1 day. A supervisor can approve that. It just can't be used to extend your time. Additionally, exit interviews are required to receive your payout. The exit interview can be done with any employee in HR, so it doesn't have to just be the director. It can be any of the generalists or the director in HR who do your exit interview, again, unless approved by the HR director. So there could be some circumstances where an employee, has a severe medical issue and they can't come in for an exit. We're not going to not give them a payout because they couldn't make that exit interview, but it has to be specifically approved if you're not going to have an exit interview. And then the last change is that you have to work here 1 year in order to be eligible for any payouts. Currently, if you work here 1 week and put in your notice, you get paid out your vacation, your unused vacation. This changes to say if you haven't been with us for a year, you're not going to get paid out any of that time because you haven't been with us long enough to earn a payout. So those are all the changes related to separation from employment, payouts, how that works. Any questions on those? All right, 4.03 is the next one. This one, we currently have what's called discretionary time and vacation. Our current policy says you can use vacation for anything, and you can use discretionary time for anything. So we essentially have the same exact PTO, just divvied up into 2 buckets with rules on how long you can take each one. We're changing that so that there's just 1 bucket of PTO. You get 1 bucket. We're not changing the hours. We're not changing the amount. Everyone is still getting the same amount, just rather than in 2 buckets, we're putting it into 1 bucket. The other change that is a monetary change is currently you earn discretionary time throughout the year. That's not going to be the case anymore. You're going to be issued your entire bucket of PTO on 1/1. Again, that is relatively common in the industry. You get it 1/1 and you have it, so you're not earning it. The money comes in when employees decide, I'm going to retire, but I'm going to wait until January 15th to retire because then I'm going to get paid out the PTO that I got on 1/1. So that's where you'll see the difference in money happening. But again, that's pretty standard, and it's in our union contracts that way already. Questions on PTO? Next is 4.07. This is a change that I would tell you is not standard right now, but I think it's who we want to be as an employer and who we want to be as the city of Sheboygan. So this will allow any employee who is actively deployed in the military to continue to receive the same pay that they're making at the city. So what that means is the city will pay the difference of their military pay and what their actual city pay is. So it's not that the city would be paying the full salary amount, but if they're a $50,000 employee and their military pays only $40,000, the city will pay that $10,000 difference while they're actively deployed. Our current policy limits it to 2 weeks, only limits it only allows, I think, salaried employees. It's very piecemeal. Again, I think who we want to say if you're an employee and you have made the decision that you're willing to risk your life for the country, that we want to make sure that you and your family don't suffer for that. So again, that's not industry standard, but I think it's who we want to be as people. Questions about that? Next is 4.08. This is a change to bereavement. The current policy says if an immediate family member, which is defined in our policy as mother, father, child, or sibling, I think, you get 3 days. Any other relative, which is defined as in-law, grandparent, aunt, uncle, you get 1 day. We're going away from that and we're saying you get 3 days whenever someone that is your family passes away, and we're not defining what family is. Again, we want to acknowledge that families come in many shapes and sizes. Some people were raised by people who have no biological blood to them, but are still more important to them than a blood relative. So the new policy says you get 3 days when a family member passes away, doesn't define anything further than that, and supervisors are empowered to work that through with their employees. Questions about bereavement?
Alder Perrella?
I like that very much, but animals are not included.
No, it needs to be, I guess the policy doesn't say that, but yes, it needs to be a human family member. If someone's pet died and they needed to take time, I would encourage our supervisors to allow them to take time, but out of their PTO bank, not out of their bereavement. So, anything else?
Go ahead.
Excuse me. I would think that you probably should put excludes pets, just saying, because
Okay.
further down the line, we'll hear it.
Okay, yeah,
Or not.
Or not. Yeah.
okay. Next is 4.18, and tuition and training reimbursement. My understanding is that this has been talked about for quite a while at the city, but this is run through the HR department, not through individual departments, so the budget comes from the HR department. And there are numerous qualifications. So the degree that you're seeking has to be related to your field. So I couldn't get a degree in astronomy because that has nothing to do with my current role. You have to have worked for the city for a specific amount of time. You have to get a C grade point average or higher in order to be eligible for reimbursement. And then the reimbursement is limited to dollar amounts, which are all stated in that policy. Also, this should be budget neutral because the funds were already in a fund in the city administrator's budget that has moved to HR. So it won't be any additional cost, but we're finally getting this policy put into place, which had been talked about for quite some time. Questions about that?
Alder Perrella?
Does currently exist a program or not?
No, the program doesn't exist, but the money had already been essentially set aside for training. So that's what's moving
Okay,
over to that.
thank you.
So there's just two more that I would consider like significant changes. The one is 5.10. This is the cell phone reimbursement policy. So currently, any city employee who's required to use a cell phone for their job can choose to either have a cell phone issued to them by the city and carry 2 cell phones, or they can choose to use their own cell phone where the city pays them $40 to use their own cell phone. That policy was put in place back when people had to pay for minutes, had to pay for data, had to pay for additional plans and everything. Currently, the cost for the city to provide a cell phone is actually a little less than $40 a month. So this new policy states if you're required to have a cell phone, the city will issue you a cell phone. If you, though, say, I don't want to carry 2 cell phones, you can elect to use your own personal phone as that phone. That's fine, but the city's not going to pay you to convenience you and only have you carry 1 phone. So it's eliminating that $40 a month payment for someone who uses their own phone. Doesn't take away their ability to use their own phone. I would tell you, I'm not the city attorney. However, with open records, it's much better to have a separate government phone so that you don't have to worry about where the records are stored, how the records are being accessed. But we're not taking that option away from employees. We're just no longer paying them to use their own phone. Questions on that? So then the last thing that wasn't included in my list, because it's not in the handbook and I forgot about it, is that we are eliminating the referral bonus. So the reason that the referral bonus is going away is twofold. One, when we look at diversity in a workforce, we want to ensure that we're not just hiring people like us. And what referral programs often do is bring in people like us, because we're referring people who are in our circle, rather than referring other people. So that's the first reason. And the second reason is that we as an employer should want our employees to be advocating for our place of employment and should want our employees to be saying, hey, you should come work at the City of Sheboygan because it's a great place to work. Not, hey, you should come work at the City of Sheboygan because I get a $500 referral bonus if I recruit you. So the referral program is also going away under the proposed policy handbook. So those are the significant changes. There are more than that, but nothing that I would consider like significant. It's mainly word changes and things like that.
Any general comments, questions, Alder Flicky-Paneski?
Thank you. I agree with all of these. They're obviously very well thought through. I'm familiar with some of them from historic area. I would like this committee to be able to, when these go in effect, when do you expect them to be in effect?
So the plan would be that this handbook would go live 1/1. One other thing that if I
Okay.
could just quick note, it says in the resolution, but all you're doing today is approving these policies. Once these policies are approved, what will happen is when Administrator Bradley starts, he will create a cover page that welcomes people to Sheboygan, that talks about the handbook. It'll be formatted and put in a lovely book that's all together. So there's more work to be done, but none of the content will change once you approve these policies. Additionally, it allows the administrator to change these policies as needed for the administration of the city.
Okay, that brought up something else. Once we pass these policies, we don't see them again?
You would not see them again. Well, you would. The plan is, and I'm putting it in notes, the plan is that every year a new handbook will come forward. Once this one gets passed, in future years, it should only contain the additions. Like you won't have to review 100 pages, you'll review the 5 policies that were added or whatever changes. But that every year there's a new handbook. So next year's handbook is the 2024 handbook, and then it's the 2025, as opposed to currently where we have the 2016 handbook that we're operating out of and people don't know what year it's supposed to be. Additionally, Casey will be issuing a new letter every year, but that will only be given to you as like here's the new thing. The resolution also states that anytime that Administrator Bradley changes a policy, it has to come to Finance and Personnel to be not approved, but for your knowledge, for your notice.
Okay, that was part of it. And then the other thing is, I would appreciate it if this committee would get a report for how many people did we have on military leave? How many people were eligible for payout who declined the exit interview? So I would like to have a running total of how this all works in practice, because if those numbers are available to us, we'll know better over a trend line what's working and what's not working, and be able to compare and contrast those with best practices every place else.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Any other commentary from the committee? If not, other alders, Alder Decker?
Yes, I just have one comment, I guess, and it's not, one of the things that we had talked last year when we were doing all the wage scales, wage studies and things like that, and I brought it up, and I should have brought it up to you before, what I would like to see is an employee engagement committee that would work with HR on like something like this, so that the employees can give some of their input, because sometimes they can bring some valuable, thoughts and things like that. A couple of DPW employees, a couple of library employees, a couple, that they, have a, like a standing committee that maybe they just meet a couple of times a year, but they can bring things forward from their groups to say, hey, this is something that we see going on. We'd like to have a change like that. So that's one thing I would like to, I said it then and I didn't say it to you, and I apologize, Adam, it's not your fault. But I'd like to see it going forward. That's something that we would look into.
An employee committee to review policies and
Yes.
get feedback on how.
Working in the school district, we have a thing called Meet and Confer, where we meet, occasionally when we have different policy, things like that, and we work through, so.
Okay. Did you, Chuck?
So you're done with your comments, I've got just a comment on your motion.
Okay. Do we have any other comments or questions from the committee or any other elders present? If not, I have some commentary of my own, but I'll let the city attorney go first.
Yeah, just on your motion, I realize that even though we did talk about the January 1 date, it's not actually in your resolution. I missed that when creating that part of the resolution. So I would suggest that you, as part of your, if you're going to approve this and send it on to council, that you also include in the motion that it would be effective 1/1. There were a couple of comments about things that you'd like to see in here. Just so you know, the document itself wouldn't change unless you make a motion to amend it. So.
That brings up one further question with the comments I have. I first want to recognize Director Westbrook and his team, everybody who's contributed to this effort. It does not look like it was a small undertaking necessarily. And it is something that has been a desperate need, I think, in the city for a while. It both gives that transparency as to what the expectations and requirements are, and also is the source of consistency as the different processes are laid out in the document and are executed in that way each time. So thank you for all the time and effort that went into this. You can tell it was put together with care. And I say that both to recognize all the work that went into this and also to make it clear that what I'm going to say next does not discount any of that. Just with the size of the document and the depth of the content, at least in my opinion, from the time that we received it, I didn't have enough time to review it as thoroughly as I normally would. So I'm going to ask that the committee does forward this on to council, because we would still like Director Westbrook to be able to be present at council when this is discussed, to answer questions and share his insights. I would ask that the committee forwards this with no recommendation, just given, in my opinion, our responsibility is to really take the time to know the material before we give that recommendation. And if I am not alone up at the dais feeling I may have not had quite enough, that would be my strong suggestion, but that does bring up the question. I'm not certain we can amend a document but then send it without a recommendation.
Yeah, if you're going to send it without a recommendation, I mean, you could amend it and then send it without a recommendation, but that's a little wonky.
Yeah.
I would suggest that if you're going to send it with no recommendation, then the motions to make any changes would need to happen on the council floor.
Yeah, could do that.
That works for me. I would be happy to make those motions in council, but I guess I will then leave it with the committee at that, asking for the motion to refer the document back to council with no recommendation from the committee.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Then was there any further discussion on the document itself? Alder Perella?
I just wanted to confirm that I had that thought too, that despite the best effort, it wasn't enough time to look at the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I agree with that comment and recommendation.
Thank you.
And just so you know, I think the few that aren't here, this was emailed the emails that I sent were sent to all alders, not just the Finance and Personnel Committee. So everyone has gotten
Got it.
the full thing, even if they're not on FMP.
Good to hear. All right, then one last call. Any other discussion from the committee on the motion on the floor? If not, all in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Chair votes aye. The ayes have it, and the motion passes. Our next regular meeting is currently scheduled for September 25th, 2023, and with that, we have exhausted our agenda, perhaps a bit behind the estimated time. And we are looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Chair votes aye. The ayes have it, and the motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Well done.